these little bootlickers that get in office that just worship privilege and power, worship their masters, and couldn't care less about the little cattle, that, they might get a little upset now and then. They might have a little protest with some signs. I think the better way to go about it is to directly strike the snake at the head, right? Like the saying from Thoreau, what is it, every 1,000 hacking at the branches, there's one hacking at the root. And so what I'm saying is, we do need to make a clear message, but we need to be careful with what popular movement we join and ask ourselves, what is the effect? Sure, the cause is good. The cause is always good, and the devil is the master at making something really bad look good. And they will play, the black and the white squares, the Masonic symbolism, the good and the bad. You see it even in the Catholic cathedrals on the floors. The white pope and the black pope, they got to play both sides because they know that there's good and there's bad attributes in humanity, but they will use both to forward their agenda. And so I'm saying I stand with the truckers, with the trucker convoy, and they're probably some of the best people on this earth. I saw the the farmers, just insane stuff, ramming tractors through these barricades. I mean, these people are passionate, obviously, right, about all this. I saw the cowboys rolling out next, though. That might make a mess, all the horses walking through Ottawa. But yeah, it's quite a show to watch. And what I'm saying is we just need to be careful. If this spreads everywhere, it's been brought up recently that it might be a Super Bowl convoy. You know what? That might not be so bad. But what I'm saying is if we have these, like on a George Floyd level, and if you listen to the end of Event 201, where they talk about the distrust towards government and the civil breakdown of society could last for decades, I think that's kind of what we're seeing unfold right now. And what I'm asking is, does that not play into the plan? These guys are not, this is not just a few smart people pulling the strings here. I think ultimately on the spiritual level that they are listening to the Legion, right? They are listening to wickedness in high places. The mastermind of all masterminds, the guy who has been studying human nature for thousands and thousands of years, the entity, the adversary, Satan himself. That is the one who's the mastermind behind this whole thing. And that's why there's so many prongs behind this whole agenda. It blows your mind. If you take that red pill, if you start going down the rabbit hole, there are so many angles that you can think of how this really puts the noose around all of our heads. And the more we resist, I think that's how they have it set up. The more we resist, the more it constricts this New World Order noose. And the only way that it ends is when the lies get exposed. People stop listening to these liars. And again, they need to have a real strong message from their own people that, you know what, you need to fear us more than your globalist masters. And I'm not one to say I know exactly how to send that message, okay? But by shutting down our own cities, damaging our own local economies, and potentially creating quite a lot of chaos and blowback in society if you do threaten the supply chain, right? If this blows up on a BLM protest level of every major city around the nation just being shut down, how's that going to affect our economies? How will that not play in to the Great Reset agenda of monopolizing power to the guys who already have so much power they're not even affected by these protests? They're not affected by a supply chain crisis. They're already good. They're not affected by inflation of the money supply. They're not affected by shutting down production facilities. They're not affected by just completely shutting down the whole capitalist system in general, the whole economy. These guys are beyond reach. These guys have so much power, so much wealth amassed. These guys, the ones who have captured governments worldwide, and I won't name all of them, but they're the Rothschilds, the Bill Gates. Ultimately, I think, at the very top, according to the way I read my Bible, the harlot, the scarlet harlot, who classically early Americans identified, historically Protestant reformers identified as Rome, the woman that sits on 7 hills of Rome. Conveniently, the Pope recently got in bed with the Rothschilds and all these major Fortune 500 transnationalist corporations to create what they want to call inclusive capitalism. And basically, under the banner of, we're going to make a more equitable and just world, they're basically monopolizing more power unto themselves and penalizing anybody that doesn't jump through their little hoops based upon the climate crisis or the climate change. So where am I going with this? I just want everybody to be wise as serpents. Question everything. Anytime that there is a populist movement, and anytime that there's a massive popular movement in general that is exploding all over social media, just ask yourself, just plan ahead a little bit and ask yourself, what will be the long-term effects of these actions? Right? Does this really harm our enemies, or does this do more harm to our fellow citizens and to ourselves? A lot of these people have nothing to lose because they've lost their jobs. One guy I heard in an interview, he couldn't, because of the vaccine mandates, he was going to lose his house. He couldn't pay his mortgage. He hadn't worked for months. And their stories need to be heard. And this issue needs to be, pushed back against, obviously. I've been trying to do it on my own little small sphere of influence on multiple platforms, and highly censored, of course, on YouTube, on the videos that I have put out. But I don't know, let's just keep in mind the potential harmful side effects of shutting down big cities and threatening the supply chains. And, are you making more enemies than you're making friends? When how is this harming Trudeau when he's off on vacation somewhere because he caught COVID, right? Convenient timing there to bug out of the public eye there, Trudeau. But how does this harm, the little puppets in power? You could say it does some damage to their public relations, but you could also say it kind of justifies this narrative that the unvaxxed, the anti-mandate, are a bit of a terrorist organization, right? Terrorizing whole cities. I know they're mostly peaceful, and everybody there is, for the most part, just having a good time. And there's no really serious violence yet. It's nothing like the Chaz, like I said. Not making those apples to apples comparisons there. But I can guarantee you the longer this draws out and the more angry that people get and the more desperate the situation gets, the more society kind of breaks down into anarchy, you will see a few nutballs, nut jobs pop out and probably commit a few violent acts. And that's all they need to close everything down. That's already the argument that they used to seize their GoFundMe account that had something like $10 million, which is insane. From what I gathered, they didn't even really specify exactly where those funds were going. But yeah, That's how passionate, a lot of people are out there. If I could just get a little crumb of that for the Nightwatch show, that'd be amazing. I'm just saying. But yeah, let's support the little guys, the censored guys, the voices that you feel need to be heard, not just mine. I'm just plugging as I have to do because nobody else will plug for me. So yeah, I have to become a troll sometimes. But yeah, I mean, eventually, if things go on, you will have a few acts of violence, and then that will give that justification to paint the anti-mandate, anti-vax, whatever you want to call them, fringe, right, as Trudeau put it. It'll give them the opportunity to paint them as basically terrorists, homegrown terrorists. Terrorism being defined as using fear and intimidation or violence in order to promote a political cause.
No one was arrested today. At this point, there's another standstill. And stranded truck drivers are losing time and money as the blockade drags on. CTV's Turia Isri reports.
In just a few days, protesters have cost the Canadian economy hundreds of millions of dollars.
The ones who want to make a statement chose Coots because this is where it's going to hurt us.
Around 20,000 trucks pass through the Coots border every month, doing $10 billion in trade between Canada and the U.S. With each passing hour of the blockade, losses are piling up. This economist says $2 billion is a conservative estimate.
There is corn flour, there's bananas, there's you name it, and there's all types of fruit out there which is not moving. This is totally unheard of.
Food shipments could spoil, including 150 truckloads of Canadian beef. Fuel is also going to waste, and stranded truckers have few options.
I'm of the libertarian mindset that says you're free to do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't harm others. Your lifestyle choices, it's not the business of government to legislate morality. But if people's version of freedom impedes or negatively affects the freedoms of others, that's not a good thing. And that just gives the state more power to demonize a movement such as the Patriot movements or the Trucker Convoy, whatever it is. And I'm not saying that that's what's going on in Ottawa, although, you could say that some of the local businesses might be impacted by shutting down whole highways. Obviously, some of the people who live in the city are probably not getting the best rest, unless they have to stick in earplugs every night. I don't know what's going on exactly, but I'm just saying when you make your freedom so obnoxious that it does harm to others, then you kind of lose ground, right? Because you're setting yourself and your rights above the rights of others, which is, which you get from the left all the time, right? Through the social justice movement and the separation of class strata and minorities on pedestals, and the white people way down there in the bottom of the totem pole of privilege, to counteract the, of course, their logic, to counteract the years upon years of injustice and white privilege of the past, right? So the libertarian mindset says, we all have the same, and the biblical mindset says we all have the same God-given rights. And you're free to, you answer to God ultimately when it comes to moral issues. But if you infringe upon somebody else's ability to pursue happiness, to live out their lives and to exercise their own freedoms and to live comfortably and unharmed by others, then your freedoms are no longer freedoms. They're infringements upon someone else's freedoms. Just some things to think about. You always have to, these people are thinking, they have think tanks, and they communicate with legions, okay? Basically, demons, okay? Higher beings, okay? I'm just saying you have to think, a few steps ahead before you jump in full bore behind a movement. I'm just trying to be a voice of reason here, that's all. But you know where I stand on freedom and against these tyrants. I've been faithful to that original intended slogan for the official seal of the United States that later became the Thomas Jefferson's personal seal, which reads, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." That's where I stand. God first, and then respect of authority, earthly authority. But ultimately, the King of Kings, who sits on the one true throne in heaven, is the one who alone deserves our obedience. The one who alone should bring us to our knees. And the one who ultimately, to whom alone we will all answer for in how we responded to tyranny, injustice in this lifetime. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope that made sense. Again, I never say this, but please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the notification bell if you want to see future videos. I got a ton of videos that have not been seen nearly enough because I've been pouring most of my energy into the enemy's platforms. And so I need to, which I've been doing lately, pouring more energy into alternatives like the BitChute channel and others. But if you could, buy me a coffee. I don't have a mug with me, but toss me a couple dollars now and then. This keeps me, any kind of support financially will help in the cause of keeping me producing more content, because resources around here are drying up pretty quickly, and everybody needs money to live, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. God bless. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time. I'll have more shortly. There's surely more interesting news on the horizon. Probably tomorrow. I'll just check the Twitter and there'll be like 10 more stories to cover, and I won't have the time to do it, but you know what? I try to cover what's most important, and try to do it thoughtfully, not just knee-jerk, but try to think things through in the context of history and the Bible, and my own personal quest for truth. And perhaps you can identify with some of the conclusions that I come up with. Anyway, thanks everybody. God bless. Nightwatch N8, signing out.
On COVID disinformation, what's the message of platforms like Facebook? They're killing people. I mean, look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.